About 10 months since a US-led coalition launched airstrikes in Iraq in an attempt to defeat Islamic State. Despite significant ISIL losses, the militant group has gone on to conquer parts of Syria, and it remains a formidable force in much of Iraq. Just this month, US President Barack Obama ordered 450 additional US troops to Iraq at the request of Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi. These are not combat forces, but instead they will be responsible for training, advising and assisting the Iraqi military. Many believe US and British involvement in the fight against ISIL only makes the group more determined. Others think the international community should be doing more. Joining me now in the studio is the Iraqi Ambassador to the United States, Lukman Faily. Ambassador, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
President Obama announced recently that he would be sending another 450 advisors to Iraq to train Iraqi troops to counter the threat posed by ISIL. What does this tell us about Iraqi capabilities and the troops' effectiveness in countering ISIL if, after all this time, the US has been training Iraqi troops for more than a decade, they still need training?
Well, after last year's Mosul Nainawa situation, which just passed first anniversary, Iraq has gone through a tremendous transformation. It has done a reflection of the problem it has faced. We're extremely disappointed with what took place last year. Restructuring of the army, new politics is being devised, more harmonious politics is being devised. Support from the United States and others are essential. I think we are in a transition. We need to focus on this problem. We should do a bit of soul searching, all sides, but that shouldn't stop us from cooperation moving forward.
You say support from the United States is essential. These are advisors that the United States is sending to Iraq. Would you like to see combat troops being sent back, boots on the ground, as they called here?
I don't think there's the appetite for it on either sides. So we should be realistic in what is taking place. Iraqis, boots on the ground are there. We need training, we need ammunition, intelligence sharing, and other type of support. We certainly need training, extensive training. We need to strengthen the army so that it can establish and keep the integrity of the state and repel ISIS out of the country. In that sense, I don't think there's any boot of the ground, but short of that, I think we need a lot of help.
But realistically, can the Iraqis take on ISIL? I mean, the picture that was painted very recently was very bleak. We had Ash Carter, who is the Defense Secretary, the US Defense Secretary, testifying before Congress, and he said that ideally we would like to train 24,000 Iraqi troops to take on ISIL. Only 7,000 signed up.
The issue is not the numbers here. What we need is cooperation from all sides in relation to focusing on certain operations, theater of operations. For example, Anbar and Nainawa. We need everybody to focus on that. The Iraqi army, tribes from tribal peoples from Anbar themselves have joined the Popular Mobilization Forces, others have joined local police. We are getting the numbers there. It's not up to the stage we wanted, but at the same time, ISIS numbers as well are fluctuating. So we need to reflect that and take the initiative. I think we need all to focus on the issue rather than talk about the politics of it. We need to focus on the seriousness of the issue.
What is morale like among Iraqi troops? There was one report which told us that, Iraqi troops withdrew from Ramadi. That's a major Iraqi city which fell to ISIL. And Iraqi troops, which vastly outnumbered ISIL forces, withdrew, and that's what led to the fall.
Certainly, a serious reflection has taken place. The Prime Minister has requested a serious investigation, but the morale issue is dependent on the theaters of operation. If we talk about Taji or talk about other theaters, there's a strong fight against ISIS, everyday fighting. The morale I think, is being out of proportion in relation to the big issues. The big issues is can we get our politics, can the international support be there as a real partner, can our neighbors understand the threat they face themselves, can we work together to that effect? ISIS is a symptom which I don't think any other country want to face. Certainly Iraq has been able to repel it as much as we can, but as we said, we had a new state, we had a new political system and so on. We are in a transition, we need support, but we need to focus on this. We all need to do that, otherwise we all pay the penalty for it.
And do you think there is a recognition by Iraq's neighbors of the dangers that ISIL poses just to the whole region?
We think that sometimes they understand it intellectually, but it hasn't transformed to actual steps, hardened steps by all the neighbors to deal with it. So it's not an issue of them not understanding the threat, but transferring that, translating it into steps to cooperate with us, to support us so that we can support them moving forward. I think that needs to be a reflection taking place for them.
The United States network NBC News is reporting in the past 24 hours that Shia militias backed by Iran, they are leading the fight to retake Ramadi. What kind of support is Iraq getting from Iran?
We are getting substantial amount of support because of the urgency, because Iran thinks that threat is a common to them, it's a threat to their national security. We are neighbors. We are getting that support from others, and we are seeking that support from all our neighbors, in addition to the international coalition. So we're not saying Iran is unique in that sense. They are supportive of that. We appreciate it. We need the support from everybody. And I think it shouldn't be reviewed as Iran versus others. Iran and others have the same threat here. This is, as much as global warming and others, we all have to work with each other. ISIS is a type of global warming problem. We have to take seriousness of it. It's transnational, so we need to put other smaller politics aside to focus on this bigger issue.
You know, the threat is real, the threat is imminent. What does Iraq have to do next?
Well, we already, every day, our young ones are being killed or martyred or injured as a result of that. We are substantially looked at our politics. It's much more harmonious than before. We have certainly tried to resolve all our international problems with others. We have more or less been the victims here, by the way. ISIS came up from Syria primarily. Syrian situation has been addressed. That's an international problem. It's not just an Iraqi problem. We need to look at that as well. At this moment, it hasn't been what you might call a cohesive strategy or comprehensive strategy by international order to deal with Syria. That has to take place. So in that sense, I think we're doing more than our share in this transnational fight.
Right, so you have a political problem on the one hand, you also have a military problem on the other hand, don't you?
We have a security problem, yes.
Right. You know, would it be fair to say that the Iraqi government has lost control of a large part of Iraq? Look, you have something like, what, 30 car bombs going off every month. That's an average of one every day. What does that tell you about security in the country?
No, but this problem we've had since 2003. Right. So at the peak of 175,000 American soldiers, we had problems with that. So it's not a small issue, nor should it be expected of the Iraqi government, which is a new government in a sense. 2003, the whole state collapsed. We are redeveloping a state based on a new doctrine in democracy, liberal market, and everything else. So we are in a major transformation. The region itself is not very democratic. So we are not in the East Europe versus West Europe post-Soviet Union situation. On the contrary, so we need to do that. The United States, obviously, after 2011, the troops pulled out. That was a substantial issue for us. We need to relook at what took place. We need support from others. But Iraq in itself is what you might call the forefront or the fault line of that region. And therefore, that's why it needs the support and it needs to be nurtured.
Looking at some of the causes of the political tensions right now, especially the Iraqi relationship with the United States, there is deep concern, we know, in Iraq that the United States appears to be aiding three different groups in Iraq. On the one hand, the Iraqi government, the Shias. On the other hand, Kurdish Peshmerga forces, and thirdly, Sunni forces.
Well, Iraqi government is not a Shia. The president is a Kurd. The Minister of Finance is a Kurd. The Minister of Defense is an Arab Sunni. I don't think it's fair to reflect it in such a binary way. It's a representative of the whole parliament, which is a representative of the whole cosmopolitan reflection of Iraq. The central government is trying to, it's a coalition government. So by their nature, coalitions usually it's not the most effective way. It's a necessary formation for us to have. The United States has been able to partner with us. We have urged, and they have complied in a sense of Baghdad being the funnel of all the supports, political and military and security and others. And the United States fully understand that. They know that the integrity of the countries will be in question if that doesn't take place. So in that sense, I think we have a reliable partner, the United States, working with us. We expect that to continue, and they have assured us of that. I don't think that's a problem.
But if the United States regards three forces as three separate entities, what does this tell you about U.S. recognition of Iraqi sovereignty?
They are not recognizing the three different entities.
But they are arming them.
No, they're not arming them. It's via central government. The assurance we've had from the White House and all the steps, that two letters recently sent by Secretary Carter and Secretary Kerry to the Congress, to the Senate, reflected that the integrity of the state is important. Let me put it this way. Without having a unified Iraq, the fight against ISIS will not be effective. Unification of Iraq is a prerequisite for a strong fight against ISIS. That's where everybody has to understand.
Right, and the reason there is concern in Iraq, because you had a significant bloc in the Iraqi parliament, the Iraqi National Alliance, the major Shia bloc, which passed a resolution rejecting a law that was in the works here in Congress in the United States, which said that we need to...
Yes, obviously there is a fear back home that we need, for the integrity of the state, because we think that the fight against ISIS, we all have to collaborate with each other. Any signal from any country, whether it's a provisional or whether it's an actual law, it's important for us that they support us. So in that sense, there was a fear back home, and they reflected that back here. They appreciated that, and I think the Senate last week voting against such a resolution amendment proved that, that we are all on the same wavelength here.
You said a moment ago that Iraq effectively collapsed more than a decade ago, and that it's going through a period of transition right now. That arguably started after the U.S. invasion of Iraq. Was that a mistake?
By whom?
By the United States?
Well, you need to ask the Americans that.
Okay. Do you, as an Iraqi, feel that the United States may be responsible for what is going on in Iraq right now and should be part of cleaning up this mess?
I think we can all do self-search here and see how we can work with each other moving forward. However, we are where we are. I think the United States should have done more of their homework. We Iraqis should have appreciated more of the U.S. presence there. I think I'll leave that to the historian to look at. What I would say is the common threat we have now, we need to work with each other. We have partnership. We have strategic framework agreement, which articulate the relationship. So let's use that and utilize it to the best will and interest of both countries.
Looking at the threat that Iraq faces right now from ISIL, where does ISIL get its support, especially financial support, from? There have been reports that Iraq is concerned that some of that support might come from countries like Qatar, from Kuwait.
We have raised these questions to the international coalition, that it's not just an issue of the funds, it's an issue of being able to sell, for example, oil, which is an international commodity, with other type of fundraising. So we have raised this to all our neighbors, and we have raised it to the international community. Last year at the UNGA in September in the United Nations, there were United Nations resolutions against that. And in addition, by the way, not just to the fund issue, you have the jihadists being able to come across at ease. We do have in thousands from more than, I think, about 70, 80 countries with nationalists in Iraq and in Syria. So in that sense, a question has to be asked as why countries allow their nationalists to leave their country, homeland, go to Iraq. And that's my point. We are the fault line here, and everybody needs to look after the fault lines.
Last year, the Washington Post reported that there were strenuous efforts being made by the United States to convince the then Prime Minister, Nouri al-Maliki, to have a more inclusive government, to bring Sunnis into that government, to have some kind of power-sharing government that would perhaps diffuse tensions, diffuse the threat in Iraq. You have a new Prime Minister now, al-Abadi. What are the major challenges that he faces?
He has a coalition government, which is reflective of that. The challenges, I mean, the whole country is, as we talked about, the integrity of the country. He has to preserve that. The reflection of the key challenges in relation to, for example, reduction in oil prices. So that our income has substantially reduced as a result. Something like 40% of Iraq revenue were slashed off from last year. So that's another issue for us. We have the issue of corruption and others as well. We are, as I said, a new development democratic entity with a substantial amount of resources, but substantial amount of challenges. The support we need is eminent. It's an important stability factor for the region, and it can also be a source of instability if people don't look after Iraq.
I'm just wondering how far the Iraqi government is prepared to go. We had the governor of the province of Nineveh, which is the Sunni-dominated province, Atil Nujaifi. He said that he tried to get a force together to take on ISIL, but no weapons were forthcoming from Baghdad. He did not get the support that he needed.
And when I talked about we are short of weapons, we are short of weapons as well for central government. Whatever funnels we have received from others, we've been able to funnel it. Whatever support we've received from others, we've been able to funnel it to the KRG and to the tribes and others as well, to Popular Mobilization Forces. The type of support we need is substantial across all. We have done our bits. We will continue doing. This is our fight. We're not asking others to send their troops here. However, to do that, ISIS has proven that they are a formidable enemy, that they can't think outside the box, that certainly they have support from others where they shouldn't have. And we need to think of this evil entity as much as global warming, as I said, is a global problem. This is a global problem as well.
Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, sir.